10 minutes, 15 minutes just it almost seems absurd to try to fit in the sheer amount of work that Kiera's done in the world of drawing, and has taken drawing to, I think, another level of exploration and application, which is, I mean, just not just staggering to look at, but also really inspiring, and just makes me want to get out there and do loads and loads of different things. So Kiera, thank you very much for everything you've done so far for the drawing community. And I'm going to hand over to you now.
Thank you so much. Yeah. And thank you for the invitation, and thanks for everyone for coming. It's great. So I'm a visual artist and I've been practicing for about 20 years. I'm also a doctoral researcher at Loughborough, but I live in Sligo in the west of Ireland. So I'm really lucky to live here, and I just travel over. But part of my practice and research, which I've always been interested in, is the idea of the relationship between drawing surface and the hand-drawn line or mark, and how surface affects the register of the drawn line, particularly the gestural line. My materials that I use are really traditional. They're charcoal, chalk, graphite, and ink, and I really stick to them. And sometimes I make my own inks from natural materials. The surfaces I use are traditional drawing surfaces of paper, but also walls, sewage tanks, handball alleys, lots of different things. And I'll show you that in a sec. And I consider also like a traditional drawing paper, which is considered 2D, but actually it's 3D. It's already form. It's already have endless possibilities that, you know, can be towards a sort of sculptural form, I think. And when I consider surface, I consider form, the material, the texture, the weight, size in relation to the body, but definitely, and moreover, I guess, I really consider the function of whatever the surface may be. So if it's paper, like, I mean, is it leisure paper? Is it fine art paper? Is it a wall? And where is the wall? What's the function of the wall? And all of this sort of feeds into whatever the drawing may be. So for me, I guess, the surface is as important as the line, because the surface affords us a sort of a certain kind of sense of something. It registers the line in a way, in a particular way, and because it's not a passive blank object, no prior significances, like it exists before the mark. So for me, surface is about content and context. But having said that, I would also say that line must respond to the surface and must be in dialogue, and it's not just a plant image onto it. So I'm really interested in that sort of symbiotic relationship between surface and the drawn line, and that's a core part of my my practice. But I'll just show you some work here. I'll just check the time. Okay, so the first one is, it's not working. Why is it not working? I'll just do this. Okay. This is the site responsive. It was a commission from CCA in Derry. I was asked to draw. I walk around Derry and find two areas to draw, and I picked the Peace Bridge, which is quite a culturally, politically significant structure. On one side, I don't make any preparatory drawings. I turn up with the materials and I just draw and see what happens. So that's what this is. I was thinking of the ideas of what this bridge is, and how it's, you know, the idea of a map and how it's point and line, and this bridge sort of connects to sort of communities. And I was thinking of that when I was came up with this. The next day I drew on these pillars, which is on the other side of the wall. Now these pillars are huge. And the white part of this took me 4 hours. The black part, the charcoal, took like 20 minutes, and it was stopped after 20 minutes. I can't really tell you why, but it was a shame that it was stopped. I really wanted to continue, but I think that just, yeah, it is what it is. But the surface of that just kept on sort of soaking in the material, which I found that quite interesting to work on. It was difficult to work on. This is a work I did in Sligo. It's actually my local beach, and there's these huge concrete pillars at the end of the beach. And again, I just turned up with materials. I didn't know what I was going to draw, and I worked over 4 days, over a couple of weeks, and I drew, and I didn't like what I drew. And what I mean by what I didn't like, I guess the drawings were too enclosed into themselves, and when they look like that, they can look quite graffiti-like and not sort of part of its content, and sorry, its context. So then I came back and I did, this is chalk, the green is algae powder and seawater, sort of makes a sort of a paint. And then up here is just the algae powder. This is natural green here. And these are works that, yeah, after 4 days, I created these works really early in the morning. It was really good fun. Sorry. This is, I guess, more studio-based work where I would take drawings. These drawings are about 10 years old, and I inked them up and I started drawing on them again, and playing with the idea of perception of drawing and how, and definitely the relationship between sculpture and drawing. And I just basically cut up the paper and weaved. It's actually 23 weaved drawings. This will be made again in another iteration down for a Cork exhibition later in the year, but I plan to have it at least, 6 times the size of this. This is like about 4, I can't remember what this is. I think it's about 4 foot, maybe 6 foot. So it's quite big, but yeah, I definitely want to make that a bit bigger and much, and different drawings on it. This is a work, the one on the left, this one over here, it's A0, and it's the same paper from an exhibition I had in Australia 10 years ago. It's the same paper, but I cut it up and I weaved it together. There's no backing on it, it's just weaved together, and that's just a detail of it. And I really enjoyed making that. That's going to be in India at some point this year. And again, I want to develop this into much larger weaves where I can, fill a gallery wall, but sort of in a Sean Scully-esque kind of way of using blocks somehow. I haven't really figured out, but something like that I think could look quite great. So we'll see what happens with that. This is a work, this is digital work. I also drew, this is site responsive drawing. So this is a handball alley. This black is actually, which you can see slightly bigger here. It looks tiny, but it's huge. That's the top of that. I was on a 6-foot ladder, standing at the top of a 6-foot ladder, reaching with a stick in my hand, and that was the top of it. So you can see how big it actually is, but I quite like the idea that it appears smaller. So the surface of this was really important in terms of its function as a handball alley, that actually in political circles, in Irish circles, sorry, its functions as a sports, but also it has political history to it. And then when I looked in the walls, there was all these holes in the side of the wall. And this whole project ended up being, which is a larger project of my PhD and my other work, where it's still the same work, but in terms of how drawing has the capacity to record emotional vibrations of spaces. So this space, to me, this particular village, to me, feels quite, I would say, ill. It's the word I'd use. But these are digital drawings that the real drawings that I then superimpose onto these other surfaces. This one here, these are all actually from another project from a graveyard that I did. And that's what this particular handball alley became, a kind of a graveyard to me. So I started digitally putting them together. So the surface really in this told me what the work was about rather than anything else. Again, we have this a commission in Scotland. And this is a really popular beach in Portobello in Edinburgh. Lots of people swim there, but there's these groins at on a beach, and I took this idea of a warning, this sort of motif, and I used it as a sort of like a environmental concern around this beach, because when I did some research on this beach, actually, people should not be swimming on this beach. It's not fit for purpose, I guess. But just highlighting just really simply in chalk. This is where people would come to bathe, not to get changed for the bathing. And it was quite interesting. They called it their changing room. Quite liked that I decorated their changing room for them. And this work is the one that I started from the beginning. This is the last one. 2017, I was walking by, had chalk, just decided to draw, so I did. And it was really the start of everything. It became an exhibition, it became a book chapter. Yeah, and it's just chalk on this sewage tank, which I didn't know at the time, but it really started my PhD, this piece, and just going with my gut. But I just was responding to the surface, and I didn't know what it was at the time. And I think that really stayed with me. This particular work stayed with me a lot. So that's it I'll stop sharing, and if you have any questions.